be a monkey's uncle and call me Charlie, because here we are in December 2020, and not only did AEW World Champion Kenny Omega once again feature on Impact Wrestling, but he's also teasing that the Bullet Club are heading that way. I mean, is it a new Bullet Club? Is it a revamped Bullet Club? Is it an extended Bullet Club? I have no idea, but I tell you this, it got me damn excited. And my name is Swann from WhatCulture, and you are watching Ups and Downs for Impact Wrestling. Thanks for voting in this week's Retro Ups and Downs poll. You did indeed vote for WrestleMania 25, so we're going to get into Undertaker versus Shawn on this Friday. But for now, everybody calm down, because as always, Impact is such a strange show. You never know what you're going to get. Let's up those downs. The opening video for Impact this week was so good. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I've already made my feelings very clear. All this crossover stuff makes me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum. We were talking about everything that had gone down at Final Resolution and saying, well, I wonder what's going to happen with Kenny Omega later on, because he's back in his bus. First, though, it was the next step between Tenille, Dashwood and Alicia Edwards. And yeah, it was fine. Because at the pay-per-view, the Edwardses had failed to defeat Karl with a K and Tenille Dashwood. So here, Alicia was like, all right, let's just keep things simple. I'll take on you, you take on me, I can punch you in the face of the wall, and then we'll see what goes down after that. And do not forget how quickly this escalated. Alicia Edwards wanted to be buddy-buddy team with Tenille Dashwood only like 3 weeks ago, and now they're having a massive fight. Eddie Edwards was at ringside too, and Alicia flew out of the box and started to kick ass. But it didn't last very long because Tenille Dashwood turned the tables and also kind of insulted her. Now, given that Eddie was on one side of the ring and Caleb with a K was on the other, well, you could just see what was coming a mile off. Because Caleb kept getting involved, Eddie went to sort this out, somehow got hit with like a loaded bag or something, and then when Alicia Edwards dove out of the ring to try and balance it out, Tenille Dashwood basically pushed Caleb right in the way. The end was nigh. Because when Alicia did get back in the ring, Dashwood just kicked her right in the head. Down she went because I guess she got knocked out. 1, 2, 3. The Edwardses are now 0-2, so they kind of suck. This then continued to just go because Sami Callihan hacked his way onto the big screen and essentially said to Eddie Edwards, I'm done with all the sneak attacks. I'm done with you attacking me from behind. I'm done attacking you from behind. Let's have a match at Genesis, which is Impact's first pay-per-view in 2021. And then I'm pretty sure he threatened to kill him. And you know what happens when people do threaten other people's lives. In the world of wrestling, we bring down the kill 'em counter. There it is. And very nicely, we're up to double figures. We are up to 10. That's really quite a lot of death threats. We had a backstage interview with the Motor City Machine Guns after this, and at the moment they're having a very good time because they have defeated Triple XL, they have defeated the North, and the final part of their plan is winning their tag team titles back from the Good Brothers. So they're going to bide their time, they're going to wait until Luke Gallows is back on TV, and then they're going to whoop their ass. For now, though, later on it will be Chris Sabin versus Karl Anderson. And I wonder what could happen there. And then we did get a little bit of a tease because we cut to Don Callis and Kenny Omega in their bus, and who was still sat with them? None other than Karl Anderson. And Kenny and Don were like, look, dude, man, bro, come on. You were this massive success in Japan. Are you going to let these jabronis talk to you like that? You should go and sort it out. So Karl Anderson basically stood up and went, all right, I will. He kind of did. Because as he was looking for the Motor City Machine Guns, he bumped into Rich Swann. And so he just gave him a piece of his mind and said, I don't appreciate any of it, when Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley also appeared alongside him. And they all basically laughed at Machine Gun like, ha ha, you're called the Machine Gun, we're the Motor City Machine Guns, and because we have more words, we're better than you. But the way I look at it, when Luke Gallows does return, we're going to have the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega. There's 3 dudes right here. Why don't we do a 6-man tag? That is a massive spoiler. And then Moose was here, and what a great job Impact Wrestling has done when it comes to him. I know I say that every week, but I'm always so surprised. He came out in his nice suit here, and he was so happy that he had brutalized Willie Mack at Final Resolution. He also had a new target though, because he name-dropped Rich Swann, and he said to Rich, hey, why don't you go talk to Willie Mack about what I do to my opponents, because he's going to be out of actions for a couple of weeks. I was like, dude, Rich Swann doesn't need to talk to Willie Mack about injuries. Poor Rich Swann was out for months. Willie Mack then blasted into the arena, and he was absolutely livid because he didn't appreciate what had happened over the weekend, because obviously the referee had stopped his match because they felt like Moose was beating him up too much. And he said, look, I'm not going to come down there. I'm not allowed, as officials surrounded him. But what I do want is a match with you next year, and it's going to be I Quit. So if I do have to give up, it's going to be on my terms and no one else's. Mac then tried to rush the ring, but the security guard stopped him because he's not medically cleared. Although Moose was so ramped up, he started hitting these guys, and man, he wasn't pleased, because when we had an interview backstage with the man, he was like, look at my shirt, it's absolutely ripped. I am sick and tired of these indie wrestlers trying to get any opportunity they can, including being the security guards. So from now on, they better stay out of my way, otherwise I'll break them in two. Moose is basically a maniac, and you've got to imagine that sooner or later, he's going to go after the Impact World Championship, but then what's going to happen with Rich Swann and Kenny Omega? Something very interesting is afoot. Chris Bay and Rohit Raju were then basically yelling at each other in a locker room. Well, not really, they were pretending to get along, but of course Rohit Raju was devastated that he lost his X Division title, and Chris Bay thought this was quite funny. And Rohit turned to him and went, yeah, well you lost too, and unlike you, I have a rematch. He was right. Chris Bay, though, had a great idea, because he was like, Rohit, the only reason you lost is because TJP is pretending to be Manic. Well, I have a match with Manic in around about 33 seconds, so why don't you come to the ring with me, and together we can expose him, and then you can get your championship back on a technicality. Poor Raju bought into this hook, line and sinker. He about to be screwed over. And then we had another one of these paid-for AEW adverts. I just love them up. It was just Tony Khan and Tony Shivani once again stood here just taking shots at Impact Wrestling, but they hinted that they were going to keep the company afloat, and they just do a good job of making you go, man, we have a cross-promotional war. Shivani also threw some fire when he said he talked to Christopher Daniels and Kazarian about their time in TNA, and if they remembered it, and SCU had told them, we have no recollection of this. Because TNA sucks. Right, okay, going back to Final Resolution, it certainly seems like Cody Dina has gone bad guy and is gonna join up with Eric Young, because we got the first of 3 vignettes with the former world champion, and I tell ya, I have no idea what he's going on about. Because he was saying that wrestling is a disease and it's all about infections. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I do like how these are shot, and the aesthetic is great because he's in a prison. He's like, oh, I'm going to break out of jail. But why did he team up with Joe Doring? Why does Cody Dina want to throw himself into this mix? If somebody came up to me, which I kind of what this is, and said, Simon, explain it, I'm like, I don't know. I just think he's a little bit of a loon. This is about to get even stranger still. Then we did have some more nonsense, but it was good nonsense. Because it was Manic versus Chris Bay, so of course they had a good match, because under the mask is TJP. Chris Bay and TJP are really good wrestlers, but what you were focused on here was that Rohit Raju was on the outside, and he and Bay are trying to unmask the masked man. Because boy howdy did Rohit Raju get conned. Because after Chris Bay almost got himself disqualified, he jumped in the ring like, what are you doing, you buffoon? I don't care about wins, I don't care about losses, just take his mask off. Chris Bay then took his hands like, I don't want anything to do with you. Rohit hit him. It meant that Manic got disqualified. Chris Bay is your winner, and now, as per the rules, he's gonna get a shot at the X Division title. And he grinned like the Cheshire Cat and like, I just won this little game. It made Chris Bay look like an absolute asshole. Rohit looked like he was about to have a meltdown. And I just thought it was a clever way to get to a title match and of course keep the hood on Manic. Good stuff. However, the only thing I don't get is everything we did with Chris Bay and rushing him to his world title shot, because he was beaten before Final Resolution by Willie Mack, but Willie Mack doesn't seem to care about any of that. He then lost at the pay-per-view, and now he's technically jumped down. He's going after the X Division belt. It just doesn't fit together. It's like taking a bunch of jigsaws and hurling all the pieces into one box, and then when you come back to that 7 days later, you're baffled about why none of them will click together. That's never going to work. It's kind of what I felt here. It kind of felt like we did it for the sake of doing it, and you should never do that. This is getting it down. And then there were problems with the North. Ah, shucks. This, of course, comes off the back of Ethan Page having a terrible time as of late, and he was trying to calm Joshua Alexander down here and said, look, don't worry, I know what we've got to do. But Josh shut him up and said, no, you don't. You've been sucking for weeks now. I know what we've got to do, and namely, you just have to go and calm down for a while and leave Shib to me. Brian Myers, the man that has to be involved in a brand new feud every single week, then walked up to them. He tried to start a brand new tag team with Josh Alexander, but Josh was very sad about this, so instead, they're going to have a match later. We had another segment with Callis Anderson and Kenny after this, and basically they were saying, Karl, man, you've got to go out there and get your giant machine gun, get your weapon, and just shoot everybody down. Kenny Omega is also very upset with Rich Swann and called him Rich the Bitch. Or it's like going back to school. We're going to get that championship match soon. You just know Kenny Omega's going to win. He's the belt collector. It was then time for our knockout tag team tournament first set of semi-finals, which did see Tasha Steelz and Kiera Hogan taking on Rosemary and Taya Valkyrie. Up. Aside from the finish. Down. Now I get why we did this, but sometimes when you see a referee just stood there like an absolute numpty, like an absolute goon, as all this action goes on outside of him, but he can't see it, it makes me as a viewer facepalm and think to myself, that dude should be fired. Because towards the end of this, out came Kimberly and out came Deonna Purrazzo, and they started to beat up Rosemary because I guess they weren't happy with their win at Final Resolution, and of course because it is pro wrestling, this distracted Taya. In fact, it was so shocking, Hogan was able to attack her, and she got the pin, and yes, send her team into the tag team finals. But Stevie Wonder could have seen all of this happen, and yet the referee was oblivious. Like somebody outside and said, hey man, do you want some Skittles? He was like, oh, I love Skittles. I love sugary treats. It was just too ridiculous. I do get why we do it. We carry on all these relative feuds and it gives everybody somewhere to go. I'm also fine with Hogan and Steelz being in the finals, also because my prediction is they'll be taking on Taz and Joy Dean Grace. But yeah, this one was a little bit like, come on, man, you've got to try and make me believe. We then had the second of these Eric Young videos, and yeah, now he was really focusing on Cody Dina and just saying the most bizarre things. Again, wrestling is a disease, the parasites are latching on to Dina. Okay, if somebody came up to me in the street and said this, I'd be like, man, I gotta go, and I'd just run. It just all needs to be explained very quickly, including where the hell did Joe Doring even come from? We then had another DQ finish. Because it was Josh Alexander versus Brian Myers, and within basically the first 30 seconds of this, Ethan Page did come down to the ring, even though his partner had told him not to, and it didn't work out at all, because Brian just grabbed him, threw him into the ring post. The match then continued, and I tell you, it was pretty good when they were going at it, until we learned why Ethan had arrived down here in the first place, because as he emerged from his beating, he had transformed into his alter ego, Karate Man. Page, or Karate Man, attacked Brian Myers, which of course caused the DQ. Josh Alexander couldn't have been more fed up with this if he tried. He just looked at Ethan Page like, look at you, you absolute schmerl, you absolute schmuck, why can't you understand that you have lost it? When I was watching this, I went through two distinct emotions. The first was, I thought to myself, not sure this was the best time for Karate Man to come back, all things considered. But then two, I always do like the fact that Impact will give this kind of stuff a go. Don't give me that, oh, they're so silly, they're so stupid. I can go through WWE, I can go through AEW, I can go through New Japan, and I can find you a bunch of goofiness. Goofiness and wrestling are just in an eternal relationship. And yeah, it was dumb, but I'm dumb, so I can appreciate it. And actually, what annoyed me more is that on one episode of Impact Wrestling, we had 2 DQ finishes, and you know how I feel about that. Also, I have no idea what we're going to do with this Karate Man thing. I mean, it could go downhill, but it could become the funniest thing ever. So it leaves me in a very difficult position, but luckily, I'm able to break the system, so I am going to give it an up, and I'm also going to give it a down. I could have just given out no ups or downs, but this way is more fun. Another video with Young and Cody Dina, and as had been hinted at in all the other ones, Eric Young then baptized him. So maybe that's the end game, maybe that's the end goal. Would somebody please explain this to me? Right, okay, Larry D and Johnny Bravo. If you didn't watch the pay-per-view, you will know that Tommy Dreamer was able to beat Larry D, which means Larry D is now in jail. But AC Romero popped up to have a conversation with Dreamer here and said, hey, I don't think he's guilty, even though on national television he went, man, I'm definitely guilty, I did it. I think he's been set up. So Tommy Dreamer said, well, if you want to go prove it, please go and prove it. Just on the quiet, I really think we should just leave this to the side now. Hasn't really worked. Rhino and Cousin Jake also approached Tommy and they were like, dude, you gotta do something about Eric Young. He has gone absolutely cray-cray. And they weren't wrong at all, he definitely has. But as Tommy Dreamer said, well, if you want to do something about it, just go and beat them up. So I guess that's going to be this kind of feud. These 3 guys against those 3 guys, you tell me. It was then our main event between Karl Anderson and Chris Sabin, and it was just good stuff. Up. It also seems like Anderson may be going full on bad guy, much like Kenny Omega, because he was so much more aggressive here than we've seen of him in the past. And at one point, he started going after Chris Sabin's leg because he's a wrestler, and sometimes wrestlers gotta wrestle. He smashed into Sabin at one point, which is where Chris was able to bust out his high-flying moves. But do you know how Karl Anderson got the win? He pulled out a machine gun and he shot it. That's not what happened. Instead, he used the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up, but he also held the tights as a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm not a very good person anymore. It did make me chuckle though, because we just retired the roll-up board in WWE and Impact has done a lot of these recently. So maybe we need to start the board here, which would be something jumping from WWE to TNA. If you know, you know. Now, because he had won in this fashion, Rich Swann then walked out and he got in Karl Anderson's face like, dude, what are you doing? I don't appreciate it. They then walked to the backstage area when all of a sudden, who appeared, who returned to the show? It was flipping Luke Gallows and he was on the attack. The Motor City Machine Guns then tried to calm all of this down, but Kenny Omega, who had been celebrating on his bus, left his vehicle and he too was getting involved. And then when all was said and done and all the good guys were laid out, Kenny Omega, Luke Gallows, and Karl Anderson stared into the camera, said they wanted to reform the Bullet Club, but for now, they wanted a 6-man tag main event match at Hard to Kill in 2021, and that's exactly what we're going to get because Don Callis made it so. Like Captain Picard. But that is a pretty big deal when you consider all the implications, and I'm pretty sure that means that Kenny Omega, the AEW champion, will appear on an Impact Wrestling pay-per-view before he appears on an AEW pay-per-view. I am getting such a kick out of all of this, and overall, this week's episode of Impact is getting it up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. That didn't work. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for watching me as always, and look, come back tomorrow when we up those downs for AEW. What the hell is going to happen?